And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Alix Steel. We're counting you down to the closing bell. And here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with, well, the entire family finally back as one. Scarlet Fu joining us in the TV studio. Tim Stenovec and, oh my gosh, you telling me Carol Massar has the day off once again? So Emily Graffeo, a very capable Emily Graffeo, filling in for the ever vacationing Carol Massar. Welcome to our audiences across our Bloomberg platforms. Tim, what do you got?
I got a big week. I mean, we got Apple earnings on Thursday. We got Amazon tomorrow. We got the Fed kicking off its two-day meeting tomorrow. We got April employment figures coming on Friday. I mean, we got a big week, Emily.
And we still have earnings as well. We have Apple coming up and Amazon as well and some smaller names. But of course, you got to focus on the macro, like you said, Tim, the Fed. Jobs Day. It is a very big week.
A very big week in which we see spreads narrowing, and you see a company like Boeing able to attract almost 8 times the amount of bonds that it has on offer, easily selling $10 billion of corporate bonds.
What's interesting, though, as I mentioned this earlier, is that 81% of S&P 500 firms have beaten first quarter profit estimates so far. That's a really big number. But the stock price hasn't really outperformed even if you have beaten. Of course, that's a Mike Wilson over at Morgan Stanley, just being a little bit of cold water on any kind of rally that we're going to see.
Yeah, he has a lot of cold water. I think his faucet only has one temperature.
He doesn't like rates at these levels.
But in fairness to Mike, too, because, I mean, there's a good point, though, too, because he was, you look at the revenue growth and the revenue beats, I should say, not as strong as the bottom line beats. And more importantly, when you look at the guidance that these companies have given, a lot of that has come in a little shorter than what folks were expecting. Let's walk you through the numbers here on this Monday afternoon. Modest gains across the board for the major indices here in the U.S., with the S&P 500 up about 16 points or 0.3%. A similar percentage move right out there for the NASDAQ composite, also up 0.3%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to move higher by more than 140 points or 0.4%. And the Russell, Tim, that's your outperformer, up 0.7%.
All right. Well, we're getting some news that Paramount Global is announcing new leadership changes. CEO Bob Bakish stepping down from his role as CEO. Not a surprise to those who've been following over the last few days. Again, Paramount Global just out with a press release saying that global CEO Bob Bakish stepping down.
Yeah, apparently he and Shari Redstone were not seeing eye to eye. There are a lot of offers made for different parts of Paramount that he at different points rejected. And as a result, they are not going with any one CEO as his replacement. They're establishing an office of CEO, which does that inspire confidence when the company is trying to sell
I don't even know
itself?
what that means.
Well, I mean, but look at who it is. I mean, no, it doesn't inspire confidence to answer your question. Though I will say this. I mean, when you look at who it is, you're basically talking about Greg Cheeks, who was running CBS. You're talking about Chris McCarthy, who was running the Showtime and MTV networks. And then they're bringing in Brian Robbins, who was, I guess, heading up Nickelodeon and some of the kids' programming here. So it's kind of a cross-section of all the major broadcast properties there. So maybe that provides some confidence that the people running this company now are probably more on the content side rather than, just on sort of the financial side.
But what does it mean for the future of Paramount Global as a standalone public company?
It means it's going to be sold, and it's sold soon.
That's where I'm going with this. So Shari Redstone, chair of the board, saying that Paramount Global includes exceptional assets that we believe strongly in the future value creation potential of the company. The question is, where does that value come from? Does it come from a new ownership, or does it come from staying independent?
Well, that's the other thing, too. I mean, we talk about, to Scarlett's point, whether this is a good idea to have basically 3 CEOs but, let's face it, this isn't going to last long one way or the other. If this is sold, they're going to have to find some different management structure. And so this seems to be much more of a stopgap.
End of an era, though, for Bob Bakish, right? He's been at Viacom since 1997.
Yeah.
He was CEO of Viacom back in 2016, CEO of the combined company back in 2019.
Yeah, and one reason why he was able to rise and stay in his position was because he did get along with Shari Redstone once upon a time, a long time ago. That is no longer the case, and this is definitely a company, Romaine, as you were putting it, set up to be sold. The question is whether it will be Skydance that is the actual acquirer, and of course that's the Redstone family's preference, or Apollo and Sony, or maybe there might even be another dark horse candidate coming in here.
I do find it interesting if you just look at the 3 that are taking over, and you guys pointed this out, but it's worth spending some time on it as we're also waiting for the numbers to come out. Is you have Chris McCarthy, president and CEO of Showtime and MTV Entertainment Studios. You have the Showtime studio part Then Brian Robbins is the president and CEO of Paramount Pictures. Then you have the movie behemoth. And then you wind up having George Cheeks, who's the CEO he'll be the CEO over at CBS. So, and that's sort of the trifecta of what Paramount Global actually is. And I wonder how that sets up each of its areas to either be sold separately or then tried to together.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the big question, though, and a lot of questions about what the new structure would look like, whether this would be sort of a white knight coming in and buying the whole thing, or whether they're actually just looking for certain pieces of it. And I think, guys, if you're keeping an eye on the wire right now, I think we're actually finally getting the numbers for the most recent quarter, and they're pretty much what you would expect it. A miss on several of the key metrics. I'll just give you the top and bottom line here. 1Q revenue coming in at $7.7 billion. The street was looking for about 7.74, and as far as the loss per share, at least on a continuing basis, looking at about 88 cents here. Not sure of the comparison, but when you look at the 1Q adjusted EPS for continuing ops, they did beat there, 62 cents at 36 cents, though I'm not sure these numbers actually matter anymore.
Yeah, shares bouncing around a little bit, but still higher in the after hours by a little over 2%. First quarter direct-to-consumer revenue coming in right at estimates of $1.88 billion. First quarter TV revenue at $5.23 billion, missing estimates of $5.33. But Scarlett, like Romaine said, the big question is, do these numbers even matter?
Do the numbers really matter? Well, if you're a potential bidder, they do, because the filmed entertainment revenue was actually one part of the business that beat analyst estimates. $605 million. The consensus estimate was for $577. And again, if you're Skydance, this really matters, because this is what their whole thing is, right? Skydance is making movies, and Paramount has this storied franchise, and that's what they would be buying.
Yep. Interesting, in the earnings release, the statement is from Naveen Chopra, the executive vice president and CFO, so not even Bob Bakish there, just saying that the team delivered a strong operational and financial performance despite a, quote, dynamic environment we continue to operate in. Code, that's code.
Wow, what a euphemism.
For hot mess.
Hey, there are other companies out there reporting earnings. MicroStrategy, technology company that's really a levered Bitcoin play, is announcing its first quarter results. It has now 214,400 Bitcoin. First quarter loss per share at $3.09 versus estimates of $31.79. The first quarter revenue did miss estimates. Again, another question of to what extent these numbers matter, considering that people who buy into MicroStrategy are essentially buying this, levered Bitcoin play.
Yeah, are we surprised that the stock isn't moving more? Just either way? Like, doesn't the stock tend to move whippily with results?
With Bitcoin. That's what it seems like.
I like the way you put that, though, a levered play on Bitcoin. I mean, what's the difference between buying MicroStrategy versus an ETF at this point?
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, though. I feel like a lot of the volatility in the stock comes not around earnings season. We had Jess Menton on earlier. She said the implied move just for this earnings period was supposed to be like 2 to 3%. But she said even in past periods, it was only like 6%, which is like well below what you see for like a Netflix or a Tesla or something like that. All right, let's go back to Paramount, guys. Those shares are still moving higher here as we continue to get numbers here about the performance. I think it's interesting. We talk about Paramount Plus, the big streaming service, and let's face it, I think some of the shortcomings there are a big part of the reason why we're talking about a sale. 71 million subscribers there. That's higher than what the street was looking for, but of course, that's just a shadow of what Netflix has, or over 300 million.
When we think big picture about the companies here that are competing in this space, the Disneys, the Hulus, which of course is Disney, and the HBO Maxes out there, all competing with what Netflix has essentially been the only company to really succeed at. I wonder what consolidation looks like down the road here for these direct-to-consumer players, especially as a company like Skydance is so interested in the movie studio, and what it ends up doing with the direct-to-consumer model if this ends up happening.
So just to recap here, Paramount Global out, CEO Bob Bakish stepping down, the company putting in place an office of the CEO, 3 divisional heads. You have the CBS, you have Showtime, and then you have Paramount Network. So all of that coming in. Some of the numbers, though, not terrible. Entertainment revenue beat estimates. Direct-to-consumer revenue also beat estimates.
And on that point, Alex, too, I mean, I was just looking through the numbers that were specific to Paramount Plus, the streaming service, as I was denigrating their only 71 million subscribers here. But the revenue there is phenomenal, actually, 22, at least on a growth basis, 22% subscription revenue growth, 31% ad revenue growth, though they do say a lot of that was benefiting from having the Super Bowl this year. But overall, ARPU average revenue per user, up 51% on a year-over-year basis. I can't remember what those numbers were like for Disney Plus and for Netflix, but I know they weren't anywhere close to that.
So you bring up the Super Bowl, and of course that's going to boost the numbers, but at the same time, that costs a lot for CBS, Paramount to pay for those rights. Tim, you were saying what happens next if, in terms of all these different streaming players, they end up bundling all the services once again.
Wait,
right?
a bundle?
Yes.
Hold on.
We went from bundling to a la carte. We're going to go back to bundling again.
I'll tell you that I'm paying more for each of these subscription services on their own at this point than I was.
Emily, do you subscribe to Paramount Plus?
I do.
I don't.
You don't?
This is just like a return to cable. That's what's going to happen.
I do. Survivor, dude. I'm all about Survivor. That's my jam.
I subscribe to all of these.
I'm trying to get my husband to go on it, so we're all in on that. That's the only reason why we have Paramount Plus.
All right, I'm going to get on that train, Alex. That sounds great. Cool. Hey, that is going to do it for our cross-platform coverage of Beyond the Bell, though keep it here for all the updates happening when it comes to Paramount and all the other earnings. That is going to do it for our cross-platform coverage. Catch us same time, same place tomorrow, guys.